In my last video, I talked about what a furry was, and I described everything I could for it. But in this video, I think I'm going to talk about what is a furry and what is the difference between all the different subgroups in them. So let's get started. I'm not going to go back into the full detail, but this time I'm going to give you the big details that matter the most about the differences in the subgroups. So to start with, you have furries. Of course you know what a furry is, someone who likes dogs and cats and anything with fur on it, which can refer to anything with fur, relatively speaking. So I think you get the idea of that kind of furry. The next group is equine. Well, this is sort of obvious. If you know what an equine is, then you obviously know that this group belongs to anybody that likes horses or ponies. So technically speaking, if somebody sees themselves as a My Little Pony style character, well, they're an equine. If they want to be considered a furry, whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. The next is Scalese. This is a little bit on the nose because you can actually technically put dinosaurs in this too, because dinosaurs equal Scalese, but not necessarily. When it comes down to it, most people who are Scalese don't really like being called furries and vice versa, while Scalese are anybody that is a reptile or anything to do with a scale or anything like that. So you could technically say things like dragons and reptiles and dinosaurs are all the same in this subcategory. I consider Aquarians one of the more unique situations where usually you could say anything from, a dolphin could technically be considered a furry or a fursona to somebody because they don't lay eggs, they are technically a mammal, therefore if it's a mammal, it can be considered a creature like a furry, something like that, but because it lives in the ocean or, in an aquarium or whatever, technically it's, that. So if you're a starfish or if you're a whale or if you're any of those kind of things, then technically you're an Aquarian. So it's, it can be considered, but, it's a fascinating one. Even mermaids, I suppose. Avians are really interesting because I think that they're one of the few groups that don't have enough people that actually have a lot of respect for avians, in my opinion, in that, obviously is anything that's a bird. You don't hear a lot about the birds in the, furry fandom because, I don't think a lot of people really want to get that creative, and I don't think a lot of girls would want to be an avian anyways because you have one hole for everything, and I don't think a girl would want to have just one hole. Technically it's called a cloaca, so it would be like anything between a vagina and an anus, and I don't think you want those two combined into one and only laying eggs. Wouldn't that be a little annoying? But avians are still pretty interesting creatures regardless. Hey, you get to fly. And have you seen the bird people in Breath of the Wild? Like, damn, they got some cute bird girls there. So then the next one I would have to say is probably dinosaurs. And even though technically they can be considered Scalese, I want to give them their own subcategory because, relatively speaking, even though a lot of people would say dinosaurs are Scalese, but they're also so old and there's so many different dinosaurs that I guess you could say there's a subgroup of it that make it a lot easier for people to actually understand. And, I think when you call yourself like a T-Rex or, honestly that's the only dinosaur I can recall at the moment, but you get my point. Insects are really interesting because previously it's something I just thought about with the last episode that I did, because when it comes to insects, there's not that many things you can actually do with an insect. I mean, granted, you could be a spider or a butterfly or, an arachnid in general. I guess technically anything that's an insect or, anything like that. I mean, you could group out, spiders and say that they're technically arachnids and they don't technically are considered insects or blah 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 blah. If you want to get into the science of it, I mean, that's up to you, whatever. But realistically speaking, I mean, yeah, it would be pretty cool to have an insect sona, which I've coined the term, I don't know if it's actually a thing, but insectian. Finally, the last one, I think a lot of people have a lot of appreciation for, and the most absurd of it all is probably mythicals. Mythicals are anything between dragons and unicorns, or, anything from Harry Potter or anything from D&D, basically, that I can't remember any names at the moment. Like a griffin, there we go, there's one, or a phoenix. Technically, a phoenix could be considered like a mythical, avian, which is, fine, but regardless, it's like, at least if you're, a phoenix, you're never gonna die, but you'll just burn to death and then recreate yourself from the ashes. which is probably cool regardless.